Hi guys, it's Becky, and I thought I would do a quick video of how to make my new favorite ear wires. I have a video that shows how to make my previously favorite ear wires, but I realized I didn't have just a standalone, when somebody was asking about it in my comments, just a standalone video of how I make my favorite ear wires using the tools that I use. And so I want to go over the tools that I used for this. One of the first things that I will absolutely use are these 6-step bail making pliers. And if you don't have these, like I'll put a link to where I got these. I got them off Amazon and they're fairly inexpensive and I use them all the time. So like if you're going to be making your own ear wires, I highly suggest that you invest in some of these. If you don't have these, then you probably will want to find something that you can bend part of your ear wire around that is thicker than the barrel of your round nose pliers. This is just a paintbrush. And so something that's about thicker, like about the middle of this paintbrush, that might work for this step in the 6-step bail making pliers. Something like that. So you can use something else if you don't have the 6-step bail making pliers. If you want to get the 6-step bail making pliers, I highly suggest it. I use them all the time for all sorts of things. So that's going to be one of the main things that I use. I also, for part of it, do use my round nose pliers because one of the loops that I make is too small for this smallest step on my bail making pliers. So I use my round nose pliers for that. I always, before it goes into the ears, I use this metal file, and this is another thing I got off Amazon. I just got a whole set of metal files, which is great because I will misplace this one, and then when I misplace this one, I can go find one of the other ones that's like a different shape or something, and I've got that ready. I mean, this is like a square shape, but it will still fall off the ends. And it's because when you cut wire, even with flush cutters, the ends are still going to have little burrs and little sharp points. And being able to file that down means that you're not going to tear up the insides of your ears when you're putting your ear wires on. So I will use this. If you have a burr grinder, you can use that as well. But this works just fine for me. So it's just a metal file. So 6-step bail making pliers, my round nose pliers, and a metal file. I will also use some flush cutters for cutting my wire, and I will often also use these. These aren't necessarily, yeah, no, it is for part of the bending of the wires. So yeah, and this is just a chain nose pliers. You can use chain nose pliers. You can use tweezer nose pliers. You can use bent chain nose pliers, anything that will give you the ability to make an angular bend will be great. You want to make sure that they are flat on the inside, that they don't have teeth or serration, because you can also use them to work harden your wire without having to use these optional things. Now this is, again, optional. This is a bench block. I got this in a craft making kit, so I don't have a link specifically to where you can buy this from because it was in like a whole maker crate thing. So like it's something that I use fairly regularly. You can see it's got the pock marks from all of that. And then I've got this ball peen hammer, which you can call a chasing hammer, and it's really good for being able to work harden your wire. If you're worried about marks, you can get a nylon tipped hammer and use that with your bench block. And so like I don't always pull this out to work harden my ear wires because sometimes I just don't feel like it. So it is optional, but we'll take a look at ear wires with and without it, so you can kind of make that decision as to whether or not you want to invest in these. If you do any wire working, it is probably a fun thing to have a bench block and some hammers, just because it's fun. So we'll get to that in a minute. But those are the some of the tools that I use when I'm making my favorite ear wires. So let's get these out here and let's talk about the wire. I use 22 gauge wire. Now they do make 21 gauge wire, but for the most part, commercially available, 22 gauge is going to be the closest to commercial earwires. Commercial earwires are generally 21 gauge, and that's why when I have tried using 20 gauge wire to make earwires, it hurt my ears because 20 gauge wire is bigger, fatter than 21 gauge, and my ears are used to the 21 gauge. So by sizing down just a little bit to go 1 gauge lower with 22 gauge, I am able to make ear wires that I can wear comfortably without them hurting my ears and without them stretching out my ear holes. So that's why I use 22 gauge wire. And the soft flex wire is dead soft. You could use, like, if you've got medium hard wire, that's German style is medium hard. What is it? The Beadsmith, their wire is also medium hard, and you don't have to do as much work to work harden it if you start with something that's medium hard, but it's also a little bit harder to work with initially when you do it. So it all depends on what you've got, what you're using. Any of them probably will be effective and work for you. So usually we'll start with 2 pieces of wire. Sometimes I'll do several ear wires at once, but in general, I want to do 2 of these at the same time so that my ear wires are matched and so they're about the same size. And I will cut off these. This is about 2.5 inches of wire. Like that, which is about 6.5 or 7-ish inches or centimeters of wire. And that's what I will start with. And I'm going to find my flush ends. These ends are already flush cut because I cut them from the spool like that. Let me just get a little bit closer so you can see what I'm doing. And so on these ends, just on the tip, I'm going to take my round nose pliers and I'm going to make a very small curve on the end. Like that, just with a little P or a Q or maybe a 9. All right. There we go on that end. Now, if you're not using the 6-step bail making pliers and you are using the round nose pliers, then on this next step, you're going to go about 1/3 of the way up the barrel, right there. And you're going to bend this around all the way until it's touching your little P or Q. And if you're using your 6-step bail making pliers, let me make sure that this is the right size. Come on, buddy. It's not the right size. You're going to do it the same way around that. Let me grab this one so you can see. All right, so it makes kind of an S where you've got a smaller part of your S and a larger part of your S. And I've got 2 of these that are the same way. So this is the part where if you're going to be using something that is not a 6-step bail making pliers, you'll want to form it around, it's underneath something, there we go. You want to form it around, you'll want to pinch it between your fingers and then pull it around that in order to form it around something that is not your 6-step bell making pliers. But if you are using your 6-step bell making pliers, I will generally point these guys away from the barrel that I'm using. And I'm going to use this second to the last barrel, this almost the largest, but not quite the largest one. Hold on, guys. Let's pinch you together. And then you want to bend it around that one. All the way to the back. And these are not the same, but that's fine. And this is where I want my pliers that can make more of an angular bend, whether that is tweezer nose pliers or chain nose pliers or the bent nose pliers. I'm just going to grasp it about where this curve meets this straighter line. I'm just going to bend it up a little bit that way. Now that I've got that bend, about a 1/2 centimeter away from that bend, I'm going to cut this flush right there with my flush cutters. And now I've got an ear wire that is ready to be work hardened. And you can tighten up these curves before you harden it. And I would recommend work hardening it before you file the end, because the filing can there we go, let's get that in there. The filing can make it add some pressure to it. So to work harden it, I'm going to do one of these with my bench block so you'll see the difference. And I'm just going to use this chasing hammer on it. Come on, buddy. I'm doing real light taps. You do not have to hammer very hard with this wire. It is kind of bouncing around on me though. Just trying to hold it. I'm not great at this. But you know what? Practice makes perfect. And maybe if I wasn't so lazy and I did this more often when I'm making these, I would be better at this. Because practice does make perfect. But yeah, so it work hardens it, it flattens it out a little bit, and it gives it this nice effect where you can see it flattened out a little bit. Now, if you don't like these marks, again, use a nylon hammer. But there, so this one's work hardened. This one isn't. You can see it's rounder. So to work harden this without one of those, I'm just going to use the inside of my pliers. And this is my lazy work hardening. This is what I usually do on camera with you guys. I open and close the jaw of my pliers on this work, and it does flatten it out a little bit, and it work hardens it without having to get out my bench block and find my hammer, and it does the job. So it might just depend on which you prefer or which tools you have for work hardening. This one was with the bench block and hammer, and this one was just with my pliers. And now that they are work hardened, I can take my rasp my metal file, and I can file it down. I'm testing with the end of my finger to see if I can still feel some sharp edges. If it doesn't feel smooth when I test with my finger, I'll just keep going until it does feel smooth. And I'm doing this fairly gently. I'm not pressing real hard. I do have a firm grip on my wire to keep it from moving. And see, even there, just doing that, even with that grip, it still bent it a little bit. So I'm just going to bend that back. And now that's smooth enough to go into an ear and to hold what I've got. So hopefully this was informative and you learned a little bit. And this is my favorite way of making, my new favorite way of making these ear wires. And I hope you guys are having a great day. Bye.